Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome. It's really good to see you all here. Welcome to this Meet the Managers event in Europe. Super excited to host this event, everyone. I'm not sure if folks know, but I think over 20% of the alumni from VC Lab are in Europe. So we've launched over 400 firms to date. I think over 100 managers are in the European region. And, we thought it would just make a lot of sense, to sort of highlight some of those folks and discuss kind of like their journey and what they've learned. And it's obviously an area that we're just generally very bullish on from an innovation perspective in general. And I think there's a lot of really interesting activity happening here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Supervici. I am the head of acceleration for Decile Group. Decile Group is an organization whose entire purpose of existence is to help new and emerging managers thrive. We do this through education, programming, and things like that. And we do that through a program called the VC Lab Accelerator, where we train a whole bunch of new emerging managers to launch VC firms. We also train associates, we train limited partners to basically access this asset class. We also have a set of tools. We have a product called Decile Hub, which has become more or less the operating system for venture capital. We have back office services, which are called Decile Partners, to manage operations in a very institutional way. And we have a fund of funds called Decile Capital. So we're really trying to reduce all the barriers to entry for new and emerging managers. Okay, so that's what we do. But one of the ways that we have tried really hard to sort of work through this and help more and more people kind of launch is by hosting free events like this, where you can learn about the future of venture capital. You can learn from other general partners that are on the call and things like this. And we do these events pretty much almost every day, on something related to venture capital. So if this is your first time joining us on one of these events, you can say hello. I see Alexander said hello into the chat. You can add questions. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can add questions there. I'm going to add them to the panel. We like to make these incredibly interactive because that's how we all learn, right? We all learn together when they're as interactive as possible. So make sure that you add any sort of questions that you have moving forward. Okay. Really quickly, though, before we sort of get started here, I do have to read a really brief disclaimer here, as it's sort of customary with these types of kind of events. Basically the information presented today is not directed at any investors or potential investors and does not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy any securities. All right, so now that that's over with, let's go ahead and get started with the introduction. So super excited to have you on here, Carol. Carol is one of my favorite people, spent a lot of time together. Carol, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, Mike, thank you. So hello, everybody. My name is Karel Kratušek. I'm a managing partner of Tachles VC. I'm happy alumni of cohort, what was it, 12, I think, Mike, if I'm correct. And super excited to be here today and again, share whatever experience I can share with you guys here. So definitely looking forward. My background, technological, I spent like 10 years in VC already. So this is like continuing with my journey. So again, thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here today.
Amazing. Next up, Kusta.
Yes, so my name is Kustaa Valtonen from Helsinki, Finland. GP at Finest Love VC, and I also have an IT background. Worked at HP a long time ago, at Microsoft also. Then moved on to business angel work, which I did for quite a long time, and built with my business partner quite a large portfolio of startup investments. And now we're kind of looking at doing that in larger volumes. And super happy to be part of the session today.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Angela, can you also introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Angela McCain, managing partner of Energy Mix Ventures. My career background so far has spanned across defense, transport, and the energy sector. I'm usually based in Northern Ireland, Belfast, but I split my time there along with Edinburgh and London in the UK. But today I'm in the really very bright, sunny, hot Cyprus. So it's really nice to be here. Thank you.
You probably don't even know what to do with yourself with all this brightness, right?
There's a huge beach out there. I keep looking at it, like, look at the size of it. It's great.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us. You know, one of the things that I really try to understand when we do some of these panels is really kind of like what was like the spark, like what sort of inspired you to launch a VC firm. And Angela, you know, I feel like we could maybe start with you on this one. Your story's been pretty great. You obviously have had a lot of experience in the energy sector, but sort of like what inspired you to start a VC firm?
Yeah, so for me, it was that working in the energy sector, especially recently. So I was working for BP for 15 years, started off digital security, had a bunch of different technology related roles. But then the most recent years, it became really exciting because it was very much focused on energy innovation, what's happening out there in the world. And you know what, you guys, there's a lot happening. There's a lot of innovation out there. And I really got more and more excited for the fact that, sure, we've got massive problems and challenges that the world is facing up to. We need to be providing energy to people. It's so fundamental for life. And it has to be done in a responsible way, in a secure way, in a reliable way, an affordable way, and in a sustainable way, thinking of climate, environmental impact, and all the rest. That's a lot, right? But there's so many bright sparks, fantastic founders, wonderful people out there working each and every one of the problems and solving each and every one of the problems. That really attracted me to venture capital, the whole world of VC, the fact that we can see the solutions to the problems the world faces and also build fantastic companies while doing that. To me, that's like a dream marriage right there. So that's what attracted me.
How about you, Kusta?
Well, kind of what inspired me to get into this it's basically like a continuum of what we have been doing, and a lot of it has to do with kind of our part of the world or our region. We call it the finest Bay Area. So Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So we have been leaders in attracting the venture capital per capita, creating the most startup companies per capita, and creating the most unicorn companies per capita. We always need to add the per capita because we're small nations. So we kind of need to, we're competitive. So we know that per capita we are. And Estonia is #1 in all of those categories. Finland #2, Sweden #3. I think US is maybe 4 or 5. So it's okay, but
we have a
we're
little
the
ways to
leaders.
go.
Yeah,
We have a little ways to go to catch up, Kusta.
yeah. So we'll help you. Don't worry. But kind of the thing is that you can't stand still. So you need to do things. You need to do new things to make sure that you stay on top of the list. So basically, that's where we are. And it's always good to remind that Finland is the happiest nation in the world, 7 years running. So we want to share the happiness also with the rest of the world.
Amazing. Very cool. Very cool. Carol, obviously you've been very experienced. You've done this for over a decade as VC before, but why start a new one? Like what inspired you to kind of go after this again? And
yeah, that's I'm like the entrepreneur mindset. So I always like were funding new projects, and failing and starting again, so this is my approach. And as we invest a lot of in Israel, there is saying if you didn't bankrupt, until you're 30, you haven't tried enough, so this is my case. So so this is it. But again, like directly to your question, it's we've been investing and managing a fund, for one of the largest investment company here in Czech Republic. But there's a difference between like being hired as a CEO and actually being a founder and executing your own strategy, your own vision, and actually we are dealing with startup, we are helping them, we love this. And I was saying, like being a VC is like, if you live several lives, at once, because you see these companies, you see the progress, just great, you're meeting amazing people. So it's like having your own startup in certain ways. So as Gustav already said, like it's a continuum of the journey, and it was always the dream of actually doing so. So I'm happy that we open our fund.
Yeah, and it's such an honor to work with all three of you to be fair, and I feel really fortunate to just be on this call with you and such talent. But maybe Kusta, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, you're very passionate about the finest Bay Area, but what opportunities do you think are like the most exciting today, especially in regards to Europe and anything that sort of like gets you really like, out of bed? It's like, oh, these kinds of companies are great or whatever.
Well, at the moment, I think it's a lot about talent and skill. So how do we make sure that we have enough of those smart young people who actually make the next generation services, solutions, software, and so on? Finland and many others in Europe are kind of struggling with the Japanese disease. So we have aging population. So we need a lot more young people. So we're doing a lot of efforts at the moment to attract young people to come and study in our region. And it's one of the reasons why we see that there's great need for venture capital also, because that venture capital will then accelerate the great business ideas of what these young people will create. And that's really kind of one of the big drivers. It doesn't matter if it's AI or SaaS or cybersecurity or whatever, but we believe that when we get a lot of smart young people, add a little bit of money, we can make kind of the next wave of big things to come. And that's kind of what gets me up every morning. So.
Super interesting. Carol, how about you?
I think that, and we probably will get to it. There's a huge difference between like US and Europe and venture capital here, and it's about talents. It's about actually the critical mass of talent. So there are centers of excellence across the Europe. Finland, Baltics. There's a lot like deep tech in Estonia. That's great. Czech Republic, because I'm from Prague, so cyber, nano materials, so a lot of different things. But again, we need more VCs, we need more private capital, we need to actually support this growth, because in certain extent we are like losing against the rest of the world, and that's our mission actually, to help to change it, and support these talents, because and we probably get to it that we can. US is the big market, so if you are good in the US, you are good enough. We are a lot of small countries, and sometimes you tend to scale across, you close this border, but this is maybe not the brightest idea. So that's our job actually, to open the eyes and startups and going global.
Yeah, I'd definitely love to talk to you about that in a bit here, Angela. But before we do that, Angela, can you also kind of give the audience some opportunities that you think are interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I really liked the comments earlier about young people, because one of the things that I'm seeing that's really exciting is how many of the universities now actually foster this kind of mindset of, while you're at university and you're approaching graduation, why not try founding a company? And there's all kinds of ideas being sparked through that. That excites me. I also think there's something about, can we actually see this for people of all ages as well? Because you start to see all kinds of other opportunities open up if we think about that in a similar way. So, for example, you could be on maternity leave, and while you're at home with the baby, you might just have an excellent idea. That could be a great way to launch something new. Maybe you retire and you go to the golf course and think of a different way that would make it better. Maybe you don't play golf. Maybe you go into the shed and you come up with a fantastic idea. So I think there could be a lots more around that we could be fostering, and just making it fun, but also fantastic for people of all ages in our various nations. I also think there's opportunities, more specifically, again, for me, I'm kind of obsessed with energy. And so as I look across Europe in a similar way, I also see those centers of excellence, but maybe looking at different kind of energy areas. And I'm finding a lot of excitement around innovations on the horizon, if we think of things around material science in particular. This is probably a personal one for me because I'm sitting here right now with a titanium heart valve, right? So I guess I know firsthand that medical science and also material science together can quite literally save your life, right? And obviously it's because titanium is light enough, you can have it beating away there in the chest, it's resilient enough, it'll last your whole lifetime, etc. Well, seeing a lot of that in the kind of energy sector as well, right? So if we're looking at areas where we might have supply chain stresses on certain commodities, could be platinum, could be lithium, could be something else. Plenty of people working on, are there actually things that we could be developing or other materials that we can be enhancing to use that will displace some of that? Similarly, if we've got a problem in the world around plastic pollution, all kinds of people are working on new materials that could actually displace plastic as we know it today, but be just as good, or be more recyclable, or cause less waste from car tires and so on and so on. So material science is one area that I get very, very excited about in terms of opportunities across Europe and beyond.
Very interesting. Everyone, if you sort of joined a little bit late, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you want to go, you can go ahead and just, it's got a little question mark on it. You can select that. You can add questions to the panel in there. You can upvote them, and I'm happy to go ahead and relay them over to the panel. We do want to make these sessions as interactive as possible. I mean, Carol, let's go there. You sort of talked about like Europe. Let's talk about that. Like, so, obviously, there's, the United States, very large market, very, very sort of developed. Europe is also a very large market, a lot more fragmented, as you sort of mentioned, just because of like the cross-border stuff and things like this. Like, what are some of the challenges and what are some of like the opportunities that you see as well with that?
Um, uh, the challenge is, and it, we also invest a lot of Israel. So we have a, let's say, comparison like the extremely dense and huge and rich Israeli market comparing to, to some extent scattered European market with centers of excellence. But again, it brings the opportunities. So I think that what Europe, um, I don't know, maybe you will get to it later. So I don't really want to skip, what are the main challenges. But maybe you probably all know the Pulp Fiction movie. There's the talk between Travolta and the guy, like what are the differences, small differences between Europe and the US. And there's a clip for like VC. So, funny about Europe, there's the small differences. And how they call seed round. Oh, they is seed round, but they call it Series A. And how they call unicorn, I don't know, I haven't seen any VC having any. So these are the things, the slight differences that I think that just the market is not like advanced enough. A lot of centers, a lot of governmental money, which is great, less private money comparing to other regions. So this is something that and we are dealing with. We need to attract and to promote more like this asset class, not just the asset class as such, but the innovation that is happening actually at the very beginning and the inception. And I think that venture capital is the only and the right class for actually supporting it, because it's not for banks, it's not for like the big investors, whatever. It's for VCs that's just structured for it to support this innovation. And we really need progress a lot in Europe. That's my take on it.
Oh, I agreed, but with everything you've said, I also see that there's an opportunity for alpha, right? Like a lot of the entrepreneurs tend to be pretty resilient, right? They tend to build very strong business models almost because they have to, right, to begin with. And so when one of these UiPath type of companies starts to launch, I mean, they'd become very strong, very resilient, and they can build the next SAP or whatever kind of iconic company too. So there's it kind of goes both ways, but I hear you. Like, it's really tough at the pre-seed seed right now because there's just not enough like risk capital, right? How about you? Yeah.
And also like and I think that Gusto also mentioned, we have a lot of talents. And I think that in Europe, we let's say we are less risk averse. This is, or more actually. This is one. And like think globally, this is something that, especially in Central Europe, I think that Baltics is different, different than the UK. This is like the Anglo-Saxon world, but especially here in Central of Europe and Germany region, like, okay, we can scale to Germany and Poland, so why not to scale globally, why not to really think globally? And that's where is a huge opportunity lies for really investors to, there are a lot of great talents, great, small opportunities that can go global with actually right amount of help, capital, whatever. So I think that Europe is a lot of, and all of the opportunities, maybe more different to pick it because it's more scattered, but I think that the future, Europe will have a great future, definitely. I'm from here.
I agree. Kusta, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's a huge market. It's 500 million people altogether, but it's also very fragmented. So different languages, cultures, legislation. Even though we have EU, but it's still not kind of a single market as such completely. So that's a big difference between Europe and US. And of course, I think it was kind of touched upon already that the risk awareness. I like the American trial and error type of approach. That let's try something, fail fast, and then move on. We don't do that much in Europe. We try something and then we bang our heads against the wall until the wall breaks, more or less. So that maybe is a cultural difference. But yeah, I think we're kind of executing still quite well. And one comment where very often I get the startups coming to me and say that we're going to go now to the international markets, and we start with China. And that's an interesting one. And I try to remind them that, okay, remember that the city of Shanghai is about the size of the whole of our finest Bay Area altogether with population. So it's good to kind of choose where you plan to enter the market. So I recommend very often that go to Sweden first, or go to Germany, or try something close by, and take smaller steps.
Well, speaking of which, I'm curious. You did kind of start out by talking about how there's been a disproportionate amount of very large companies per capita being founded in the finest Bay Area, right? Skype, whatever. Obviously, there's been Angry Birds, those kinds of successes. Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think there has been so much like success per capita, at least in your region?
Well, Estonia is a great example, and I think they have generated about 11 unicorns by this time or so far, and it's a nation of 1.3 million people, so you can do the math. So they don't need that many people to actually come up with a unicorn. One of the reasons is that they had a stressful history with their neighbor, and kind of coming out of that, they have a hunger to catch up with the rest of the world. So the big difference I see between Finnish and Estonian startups, for example, is that Estonian startups are very hungry. So they're doing very good work. They want to succeed, and it shows. And I think that's a very simple reason why we're seeing so many success stories. The other one is that a lot of the early founders, like the guys behind the success of Skype, they actually have invested a lot of that money that they made back into the ecosystem. And that has generated kind of the next wave of success. So quite simple things at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, and to be fair, like that's how Silicon Valley got built too.
Yeah.
It's similar concept. People started sort of reinvesting back into the ecosystem, and then you started seeing more VCs. Some folks became VCs, right? I think I don't know if the founders of Skype became VCs, but I feel like they did, right? And then so that there you go, like kind of giving back. That's the virtuous cycle. Angela, I mean, I'm super curious to get your views on this, right? Like, I mean, energy is pretty challenging sector and things like that. Like, what are your thoughts on this topic? Oh, looks like we might have lost Angela. Angela, you still there?
I'm still there. My internet went
Perfect.
patchy
You
there.
came back.
Sorry. I just wanted to jump in and say, though, the Silicon Valley point, and I've got kind of an inkling that something similar could be happening in Northern Ireland, where I'm based as well, right? Because we're thinking about challenges and yet opportunities in Europe. Clearly, UK left the European Union, so that creates some challenges. and even just perceptions around navigating that. But London is still very much leading the way, beating heartland of VC, and very much part of Europe, of course, right? With Northern Ireland, part of the deal is, it's part of Ireland and it's part of the UK. It has this unique moment in time where it gets to be kind of both. And that opens up all kinds of opportunity. And in terms of the ecosystem there, you've got a lot of the similar magic mix there, relatively small place, numbers of people, etc. You can really build a strong ecosystem. And I think some of what we're seeing sort of pays testament to that difficult fundraising agreement environment over the past couple of years. But if you look at the data in Northern Ireland, really interesting upward trend. So I think we might see more of that localized, focused heartlands across Europe could be a really exciting way. Maybe with each having their own center of excellence in terms of what they're focusing on. I think that's quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get your views on that as well. Is there like any specific areas that you're seeing, like European founders particularly sort of excel at this point in time, given all the conditions that we talked about? Maybe we can start with you. You obviously seem to be very bullish on energy and stuff, but I'd love to get your views on that.
Sure. I mean, I think energy is definitely one. I think there are other areas where we're seeing trends across the board, and Europe is in there, like AI being the obvious example right now, but it's really quite exciting, some of the innovations that are happening around AI, and especially where it interfaces with other things like material science or energy and so on. The fact that it touches everything, I think, makes it particularly exciting. I also think, there's a lot of stuff around health tech and med tech, especially coming from Scotland, where I grew up, like, graduating at Glasgow University, very strong School of Medicine there. A lot of medical devices and other, again, materials related innovations, a lot of strength there. I find that particularly exciting as kind of one to watch as well. And then I think there's things around, security, cyber, and how these things also interface with a changing energy system and other systems as well. So I'm seeing a lot of all of those across the board at the moment.
What about you, Carol? Obviously, you mentioned security, cyber before, and is there some kind of?
I think and I follow what also the Silicon Valley and the center stuff. I think this is crucial, really, for the success of across the Europe, because at a certain level, government can support, can create the right incentives, but then it's really about to ignite this ecosystem and the density of the ecosystem. And you mentioned Sky, but again, we observe it in Israel. There is already a second or even third generation of founders actually giving money back to the system, sharing the experience, motivating, so others see the success. We don't promote the success that much in Europe, and maybe other countries, especially US perhaps. So this is something that and we cannot change it in a course of 1 or 2 years. That this is really a long-term process, but this is crucial. And there will be more and more in these centers. So eventually, it will be dense enough that really and it's then the self-propelling wheel. We can see it, for example, here in Czech, there are several centers, especially one in South-Moravian region, and they did it. They really created this ecosystem where you have a venture capital, you have companies, you have small businesses, you have entrepreneurs from different businesses, but they want to innovate. So, and then second generation of founders putting money again. So I think this is absolutely crucial. And it's happening across the Europe. I can speak for myself that I see cybersecurity, particularly in Europe or Czech Republic. I see materials. Definitely, we are traditionally strong in manufacturing and, I would say the hard stuff, even hardware stuff. So it's not, but also like the, deep tech and SaaS, in Baltics, etc. We can see it. So, there's a lot of talented people, a lot of great universities. Again, we are missing this right connection between and the transfer from university. I wouldn't say missing, but still, long way to go to improve. So Europe is a lot of talents across the industries, particularly the more traditional stuff, although like AI and SaaS, it's there. But I think this is our strong part. And again, comparing to other parts of Europe, I think that the word the name is ecosystem, to promote, to create, to support this ecosystem, because otherwise, you can't do it.
Yeah, and in your case, Kusta, you're kind of the ecosystem, or trying to build the ecosystem and almost like craft all of these sort of network effects and a lot of the initiatives that you've been trying to kind of focus on lately.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. So kind of if I discuss some of the key components of our ecosystem is the accelerator program. So we started Startup Sauna 17, 18 years ago. It became a big phenomenon at the time. Of course, now there's a lot of accelerator programs out there. We started with the universities, with the students, like these entrepreneurship societies that promote entrepreneurship in all of its forms with the young kids, and that's been very helpful, and it's generating a lot of new teams. And I think the biggest impact has been with the events. So we've started quite a lot of events in the finest Bay Area, Slush being the biggest. And it's kind of grown to be, I think, one of the biggest startup events in the world. We attract about 3 trillion USDs of capital at the end of November in Helsinki. And all the hotels are sold out, Airbnb prices are going sky high. And it's kind of generated a boom. There's even a dedicated flight, Mike from Silicon Valley to Helsinki for the VCs. So that's a good sign of success, I suppose. So it's these things that kind of, make kind of their own piece of the puzzle and create the ecosystem buzz, I suppose.
There's a kind of an interesting question, and Stuart, I'm going to sort of paraphrase this, and Stuart's sort of talking about, like, there's sometimes European LP hesitancy because sometimes some LPs tend to be a little bit more conservative about sort of investing in funds and things like this. Any sort of advice that you would give, like the prospective GPs that are on this call that are in Europe, about sort of convincing LPs to sort of take that leap of faith onto a newer VC firm? Any sort of advice? And I'm going to let anybody here answer that, whoever feels comfortable.
Well, for me, I'd be paying it forward with some advice that I've had in the past around unleashing my inner American. So there's, there's something about setting the stage for the type of conversation you want to have, and practicing some of that yourself actually can unleash some of that. So that's one thing.
My take, you're right. The hesitancy is here comparing to other geographies, definitely. So it's even more about actually the personal network, and the closest allies actually that actually it's about personal trust at the beginning, and I think it's crucial. Maybe comparing to other regions that are more used to. And we see it even like more often here. So there are like these opportunities funds, and new emerging funds like for supporting emerging investors. But it's more rare in Europe, definitely. So it's more about the personal relationships at the beginning. That's it. Probably you cannot avoid it. You cannot skip it. You cannot hack it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, my 5 cents. Why good place to start VC fund in Europe? I think it's even though we all agree that okay, it's a little bit dispersed market, but I think there's still lots of great opportunity in that, and kind of grasp it and run with it. I think that's the way to go with this.
There's the most upvoted question here, and again, I'm sort of going to paraphrase this a little bit, but it's in regards to sort of like competition. Obviously, we've talked here a lot about ecosystem building, more talent, more VCs kind of starting and things like this. But I don't know, how do you think about like competition with other VCs? I have a lot of thoughts on this. And obviously, you all know me; I'm very opinionated about this topic. But I'd love to hear the thoughts on this. I mean, maybe we start with you on this, Carol, because you've been in the business for such a long time, right? How do you sort of think about like competition with other VCs, especially as an emerging
You
market?
know where we are competing in one of the most competitive markets, which is Israel.
Yeah.
So I think VC is a cooperative game, so you create partnership, and at the end of the day, you don't compete that much. You definitely, I wouldn't say any case that we compete for a deal. If it's deal for you, I mean your expertise, your area, your thesis, you actually don't compete that much because there's a fit and chemistry, with the founders. It's super important. There's chemistry with, other co-investing VCs. So I wouldn't tell you, okay, there is competition, of course, but venture capital is rather cooperative game. Okay, we all compete for investors and LPs, but this is completely different topic. So in terms of competition, how to get to the deals, how to get a pipeline, if you know your stuff, you have the access to the environment, right partners. I wouldn't tell it like the competition. And if there is a health competition or healthy, sorry, my English.
Yeah, I love that idea of healthy competition because I think there's a lot to be said for healthy competition where we're worthy competition. We really respect each other. We like the competition a little because it drives up standards for everyone. Like it becomes a fulfilling thing
Looks like we lost you again, Angela.
that elevates and benefits us all.
You're
I'm so
we
sorry.
lost you at like
I don't
healthy
know if it's
competition.
the
We lost you at healthy competition.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think there's a lot to be said for healthy competition. When it's worthy competition and you're kind of respectful of each other, but you're in it, like I think that can lead to a lot of fantastic outcomes for everyone. I think it can be a good thing. So yeah, I think embrace that. I think that's a good thing to have.
Gustav, do you have any thoughts on this topic?
Uh, Wonderful words, healthy and worthy competition. I'm all for it, and I think it's a lot about collaboration. I think there's much more of a collaboration than competition, to be honest.
Yeah, everyone, like when you're a pre-seed or seed fund and your checks are relatively small, it's all about like getting the round done for the founder a lot of times. It's when you get bigger, Series A, Series B, and now you have to deploy millions of dollars into those companies, and you have to have a certain ownership percentage. That's when you start seeing a lot more of the sharp elbows come out, to be fair, right? It's like when in the pre-seed seed, it's a very collaborative thing. So like what everybody said here, it's not as big of a competitive thing as you might think about this. Uh, Super interesting question here from Grace around regulations. Right now we're talking about like AI, and there's obviously talk about AI regulations in the EU and whatever. And you know, how do you think about this, and how do you deal with this, and how does this affect your strategy? As you continue to think about deployment and things like this. I don't know. Maybe we'll start with you on Angela and Carol, and then Gustav.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, Europe is often associated with regulation and so on. And I think sometimes that can feel daunting, but for me, it's seeing the positives in that actually, because it can help you get things done right. And I think a lot of it is therefore actually also kind of healthy and worthy and very valuable to have. I also think it opens opportunity as well. You mentioned AI regulation, right? We have to be we have to be trying to get that right, really striving for that. So, you've got a chance to lead that for the world, and it's so important. So I see it as a big opportunity, actually.
How do you think about regulations? I mean, Carol, you've been in a sort of regulated space for some time
I
now.
can I can only underline what Angela said. I mean, this is for me, this is opportunity, because this is, and especially we invest in cybersecurity and also AI. So companies need to be compliant, and again, goes to security, data security, all that stuff. So for us, actually, many startups that we invest into are solving kind of like regulatory issue. So sometimes it's not just that market is changing, but also regulatory push, which, push to the market and companies need to adapt, which creates the opportunities. So again, it's rather opportunity. Of course, the regulation and compliance, you need to be care. But this is part of the due diligence, that, your startup that you want to invest into are not going crazy and, hacking regulations, whatever. But this is part of due diligence and hygiene, I would say. So it's rather the opportunity.
I agree 100%. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity with that. And if you know how to navigate them too, then that helps you with your diligence too, right, Carol? Because then you can see, oh, the founder sort of really is thinking through this. So they have a much higher probability of success. Oh, they're not really thinking through this as much. Oh, risk, right? They got to think through all that stuff. So there's kind of goes both ways in a way, There's an interesting here. There's basically two sort of like related questions here, maybe we could start with Kohei's question first, and he's saying, look, Europe has a very strong family office ecosystem, which is very true. Any sort of tips for emerging managers as they sort of go off after sort of family offices? I mean, I don't know, Carol, do you have any advice here for this, for Kohei on this?
I can only repeat what you and Adeo have been saying, from the beginning, and we probably will get into, like every word that you say, and Adeo said, is true. So my only and a lot of time during the program, I was like reinvented and reshaped, my view on the world. So really following what you said, even if I thought I'm right, but you were right. So back to family offices, I think it takes time. This is only thing that I can say. It's about relationship. Something's faster, something slower, but finding the way, create the relationship. It takes time. They come later usually. There are exceptions, of course, but because of they are close relationships. So that's my take to it. And there's plenty of time. It's about, systematics and creating relationship.
Agree 100%. You just got to build the relationships and find like the family offices that really resonate well with you is probably the first step there. And sort of a related question from Connor, to what extent do European LPs care or about whether the fund is in Delaware, whether the fund is in Estonia or anything like this? And obviously many of you have had conversations around that topic. To what extent has that been impacting? Because obviously since Brexit, like everything has changed on this, because before, it was like London had a much bigger pool there and it was a little bit more established, right? But now it's like kind of what do we do here? Anybody have thoughts on this?
Well, I think from our perspective, when I was part of the program and kind of looking into what domicile to go to and kind of what the regulation is that we need to meet, it made more sense to establish the fund locally in Europe because our investors are basically here. And if we were to do something in the US or we would get significant investment from the US, then looking at Delaware would make a lot of sense. But it was very complicated to discuss with the European LPs about kind of going to Delaware. It's not a no-go, but many kind of were immediately asking the questions about tax and other implications. And that's why we kind of ended up looking at kind of how can we solve this locally. And we ended up setting our fund in Estonia. And we call it the Delaware of Europe now. So it's good.
All right.
Hopefully lives up to its promise. But so far, so good. I think it's been a fantastic case, and it's a great place because of all the digital governance that you can do. So I can manage everything digitally there. So,
Angela, what has been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is around what's right for you in terms of, LPs and where you want to operate, and all those things have to be factored in. I do think there's a really, in the spirit of like that healthy competition thing, right, benefiting everyone, it's quite good if actually places in the world are um getting it right in terms of competing for, hey, come to us, we're going to be really good for innovation and so on, because that would drive good things if that was to happen. So I think that's something for like governments, like nation state governments, both within the EU and of course back in the UK as well, especially we've got a new government in place. A lot of people are raising this. Like if you want to be thinking about this, you want to be thinking about how you attract the talent, how do you attract people to want to come to your location, and I think hopefully if governments get that right, I could see all kinds of exciting opportunities in different locations as well.
Maybe my thought to that, and I cannot enjoy from Central Europe, the ecosystem and the support that actually Gustav can enjoy, and also in the UK. So we explore a lot. We spend a lot of time exploring, ideal domicile. Of course, closest to us, Luxembourg, super expensive. But at the end of the day, it showed up that for us, our experience and my experience particularly is it's no issue actually for even LPs here. We have US LPs, we have European LPs, and okay, questions here and there, but for family offices, no problem. Even for high net worth individuals, okay, few questions how it works, but check. So at the end of the day, I can only suggest, that the Delaware work perfectly fine even for Europe.
There's a super interesting question here from Boris, and I'm really thanks for asking this question. It's like, do you see certain verticals that are more relevant right now in Europe than the US because of whatever, like cultural, legal, political, whatever? Any thoughts on this? Super fascinating question. Thanks for asking, Boris. Any verticals for innovation that you think Europe might actually be better at?
Well, one very interesting space that we're kind of looking at the moment is haptics and telehaptics, to be specific. That's where Europe is leading by far, and it's something really new and coming up. That
Agree.
is something that we noted.
Agree. A lot of innovation also in cyber, a lot of innovation in fintech too. I've been seeing that in Europe, right now.
You are right, and we see it. We see it in the first hand. Europe is in certain aspects, more advanced than US, especially in fintech and something. Also, thanks to the regulations. So, the regulations here are much tougher than US. So bank, need to adapt in the same time delivering, the super experience for their clients. So I think that this is one fintech definitely. Angela said recycling, materials, energy. Again, in many cases because of the regulation and because of what how green in a good sense Europe is or try to be. So it only creates opportunities. Again, in cyber, the same story basically. AI, the same story. Maybe from different angle than from the US, but the same story. So materials, manufacturing, yeah.
I would agree. I think some of the big challenges that Europe embraces, like can we build, a resilient interconnected grid by X date, leads to all kinds of innovation around that. Or can we work some of the big engineering challenges around nuclear, for example, and really put the time in, and can lead to all kinds of reactor designs and other things. So I think we see a lot of that. Often as well, I think we see a lot of early innovation in areas that both the US and Europe are really strong on. And of course, sometimes that will grow into the US markets, and that's a fantastic result as well. So I think we see a bit of both of those going on.
And
Super
maybe
cool.
I'm sorry to that. Actually, following what you said, and this is new, I would say new and changing geopolitical situation for Europe particularly, and again, more focused toward technologies that again make us more resilient. Dual tech, dual purpose use technologies. Which is anything from agri-tech materials to health tech. So these are new opportunities here.
Agreed. there's several questions in the chat about sort of like the VC Lab program and sort of your experience. Like maybe we can go through each of you. Maybe we can start with you on this one, Angela and Kusta, and then wrap up with Carol. Like, is there some like key takeaways that you got from going through the VC Lab Accelerator program that you'd sort of like to share with the audience? There's again a couple of questions on this topic.
Yeah, so I think key takeaways for me are things like, on this point around collaboration, right? There's a fantastic community out there across the VC Lab, and you can really become part of that, and ask questions of each other and help each other out. So that to me is one big takeaway. I think there's also an important takeaway for me was the importance of right sizing what you're seeking to do, and spending some good quality time on that. And then the other takeaway for me is approaching things in that kind of sprint-based approach so that the whole marathon ahead doesn't feel too daunting because you're breaking it into logical chunks. This is the bit I'm doing next. This is the bit I'm doing next. And then when you get further along, you look back and you see, wow, how far I've come, right? So that to me, I think can be applied to all kinds of endeavors that you then get after in life. So that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, so very similar approaches, and a big thank you for letting me be part of the program, because I think what was good about it is that it kind of made me do the works and get things done. Maybe the one thing that would have been good, at least for me, to digest before I jumped into the program was that it's really targeted to the closing. So would have been maybe good to have been one step further down the road in kind of the planning work. But yeah, you get things done in 3 or 4 months quite well when you get your mind to it. So I think good stuff.
Thank you.
Maybe my takeaway, I'm old enough, almost 50. So you think that you know something. So always be ready to change your mindset and approach. So I felt again like a kid in a school with the sprints and homeworks, and actually realizing what I really don't know, or I thought I know, but I didn't know exactly. So huge learning for me. And what I would suggest, really listen what Mike and Adio and the others are saying. And this is the favorite phrase, Mike, I know you, trust the process. So maybe it's not that obvious in many cases. And because you think, I don't know, you always think what you don't know and you want the explanation. So there's trust the process, because the process really leads to closing. The process leads actually to the right result. And yeah, that's my takeaway and my suggestion for anybody listening here.
Thank you so much. And as we wrap up here, I'd like to go through everybody, and if you can share one small piece of advice for all the GPs that are on the call today that are thinking about starting a VC firm, any sort of final words of advice that you can give the audience here. Carol, maybe we could start with you on this one. Angela, and then Kusta, we can wrap with you.
Really be ready to dedicate, a lot of time. I remember Adele said at the beginning, this is one of the toughest thing, in the world, opening actually the VC fund. So that's true. So really be fully committed and dedicate your time. This, you cannot skip it. You cannot fake it, that's just it. Be ready for it.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a thing about don't be afraid to ask people. This is a very collaborative environment, and there's a lot of people who've done it before who are happy to share experiences and thoughts and learnings. I think equally to that, though, there's lots of people that will give you advice, sometimes conflicting advice. So you need to learn to trust your instincts and have courage in your convictions and know who your trusted sources are, but still make sure you are testing your thinking with people who will challenge you as well. I think that's one of the most important learnings if you can go into it with that mindset.
Yeah, it's a fantastic community. So do ask the questions, be brave. I think that's a great piece of advice. And the answers are out there. Just go and ask for them.
Awesome. Thank you, team. This is really amazing. I learned a ton. I can see it in the chat too. People are thanking you. Hugo saying this was really inspiring. I agree. I've learned a lot as well from you, which is really great. So I really, really appreciate you doing this. Everyone, if you're on this call and you're thinking about applying for one of our programs, whether it's the VC Lab Accelerator to help you launch your fund, or whether it's the LP Institute to help you learn how to invest in new and emerging managers, go to govclab.com. That's govclab.com and apply. We're all here to help. We want to help venture capital turn into the force of good that we think we can be. You can see it from the inspiring managers that we see here today, and I think we can all work together to make the world a better place. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Kusta. This was really, really great. We'll be sharing the recording with everybody here soon. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.